Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. We're here today with Bretonnia taking on the foul warriors of chaos. I am facing off against good old Reptile King. So let's get to the builds briefly. Just as a disclaimer, Reptile King, of course, being king of the reptiles, not really a chaos player, but certainly something that he can learn. We've got a Hell Cannon here, Chaos Warriors with halberds, some Horsemen throwing axes, Chaos Lord up on a dragon, a Sorcerer Lore of Death here, some Chaos Warriors up front with armored trolls. That's pretty much it, relatively straightforward. For myself, I've got Lewin up in the air with double hippos, peasant mobs, a couple of foot squires with some chevrons supported by a Grail Relic. We've got two spearmen at arms as well, and a Damsel Lore of Life. So while some of you are thinking that this is a terrible idea to bring the Chaos Lord up on a dragon, and it is certainly very, very risky, it may not be actually as crazy as you think. So you see how he took a big old chunk out of Lewin right there, and let's just quickly, I don't normally slow things down too much, but I do want to just quickly highlight here, he does have the Filth Mace. He does not have some of the other abilities that make the Chaos Lord potentially an extremely powerful character, but just watch how well the Chaos Lord does here, despite how horrible this engagement is for him. He's getting pounded by Hippogriff Knights, but he is still able to do a lot of damage in return to Lewin. Meanwhile, Chaos Warriors are going to be mowing through peasants on the low ground. And yeah, we had moved up the Yeoman Archers to do some skirmishing to try and take down the Hell Cannon initially, but had to pull them back. Now they're dealing with those Marauder Horsemen quite nicely, and you can see there, yeah, I mean, despite how well that engagement went for me, Lewin still took quite a bit of damage there, more than what I was really comfortable with. Even like that last little chunk right there, nice little Spirit Leech from the Sorcerer, and yeah, Lewin took a lot more damage than what I was comfortable with. Of course, still a very one-sided engagement up in there. That being said, on the ground, of course, these foot squires getting pounded out by trolls and chaos warriors here are a very uncomfortable situation. You can see I'm immediately going to rush the hippogriffs over to try and support. The peasant archers are able to kind of fire in a little bit here, the mounted yeomen, that is, but really not able to get set on the trolls for too long. But you can see here, this unit of foot squires, I noticed, was very... they still had a lot of unit models left, even though their HP was very low. You see how they still have 70 unit models, even though their HP is like pretty close to half. That is a great opportunity to use a regrowth on an infantry unit, because it means I'm going to be healing as many different unit models as possible. When you're healing infantry, you always want to make sure you try and heal them while they still have as many unit models as they can, and you can see how they're able to pretty much stay steady there at about 65 unit models for quite some time until those Royal Hippogriff Knights come and get a beautiful rear charge there. Just going to be dropping a bunch of terror. You can see the rest of my infantry got cleaned up, though. Those foot squires, relatively expensive for some chevrons, just got absolutely beat down. There's still lots of Chaos Warriors all across the field here, and Lewin getting perpetually Spirit Leeched and chased around by these throwing axes, just not really getting a chance to get set. Granted, the Lion Shield will mitigate some of the missile damage and the magic damage, and of course the regeneration means that I should be able to keep him alive, but certainly going to be staying on the ropes and not really be able to use him to too good of effect. That being said, the Hippogriff Knights just come back and start to crush some of these Chaos Warriors. They get a beautiful tear out on these trolls, who, you know, of course, are just trolls. Not the greatest in this particular situation. I mean, I do like trolls quite a bit in this matchup in certain situations, but the low leadership definitely can be trouble against big, like, hippogriffs and stuff, and you can see trolls are starting to get their leadership back together, but just the loss of the Chaos Lord early on was pretty rough, and that miscast was also pretty rough. Just did a bunch of damage to the Chaos Sorcerer. He's going to have to be careful. The issue is that because he's slower than Lewin, he can't really keep up, and he has to use the overcast version of Spirit Leech to be able to actually get into contact there with Lewin. So yeah, a little bit of a rough situation. Yeah, you can see here peasants getting cleaned up in the back by Chaos Warriors. No big surprises there. The trolls come back from rout, and you can see they're able to actually do some okay damage to these Hippogriff Knights. Just the leadership is an issue, and the overwatch fire from these Yeoman Archers as well, just not really allowing them to get set and really get going there. You can see one unit model gets taken down, but despite everything, still doing pretty good damage to those Hippogriff Knights. But yeah, Lewin's rallied here. We decide to charge in the yeomen super aggressively, just a YOLO for the king, Sword of Corone to help support, and then we move in to engage the barbarians. And all of a sudden, mounted yeomen trade reasonably well with that Sword of Corone active. Of course, the terror certainly helps there. But yeah, at this point, it's just a few scattered units of Chaos Warriors. These Foot Squires still online, racked up 63 kills so far, which is pretty impressive considering my opponent's infantry force here. And yeah, you can see there's still these halberds defending the Hell Cannon. The Hell Cannon itself is actually still alive, so it can get some shots in. Unfortunately, it hasn't really had that many great targets to shoot at. Outside of the Foot Squires, I didn't really have too many high-value targets that would be good. I mean, Hell Cannons aren't really that great at shooting at monsters, so like shooting the Hippogriff Knights or Lewin or anything wouldn't be the greatest. Speaking of Lewin, he is still hanging around here with 600 HP, just barely still clinging to his leadership, but you can see the peasant mobs moving back to try and shut down the Hell Cannon here. This is the true Clash of Champions. Yeah, you know, those pitchforks and mallets will do a lot against the Chaos Plate and halberds of these Chaos Warriors here. But at this point, there's just a handful of Sword and Board Chaos Warriors left. Lewin also cleaning things up. Is probably going to take a hit there from the Sorcerer, but likewise will be able to do some damage back. So yeah, Hell Cannon shot raining in. You can see it does some pretty good damage to those mounted Yeoman archers. But the Yeoman still hanging around, used up most of their ammunition at this point. Just been doing a great job supporting various engagements. The Trolls did come back from rout. But unfortunately, you know, they're pretty far away at this point from the rest of the battle. Not really going to be able to make too much of an impact. So, if you guys ever wanted to know how to deal with Chaos Warriors with halberds, you know, all you need is 4,000 points worth of Hippogriff Knights. But then you just do this. Charge in from one side with one unit. Get the other unit. Charge in from the other side. And with this many monstrous units just standing on top of them, these Chaos Warriors are going to have a bad day regardless. You can see them taking massive burst damage here, throwing a little bit of healing on those Hippogriff Knights just for good measure, just to make sure we put, you know, salt on the earth, so to speak. But yeah, at this point, it's just the Damsel finishing off the Hell Cannon, and that will be game. So yeah, fun battle with Reptile King. Honestly, I like his build quite a bit, actually. I know it seems really risky to bring the Chaos Dragon, but believe it or not, I mean, you saw, if I didn't have those Hippogriff Knights, Lewin actually probably would have been in some trouble in that engagement 1v1. We can talk more about that in just a minute, but in terms of the rest of his army composition, Hell Cannon's a super solid choice here. It does great against things like Grail Knights, Questing Knights are really, really good against that. Unfortunately, in my build, again, I didn't have that many good targets for it. The Foot Squires were an okay target, but other than them, he didn't really have that many good targets to shoot at. As for the rest of the build, I mean, Chaos Warriors are pretty solid here. Lore of Death, likewise, is pretty solid here. Armored Trolls, personally, I would probably take... Oh, it's tough because Bretonnian archers are pretty good, and the armor does definitely help in this matchup for the Trolls. I might consider dropping the armor and just replacing that with chevrons, just to give the Trolls better leadership and better stats as well. But in terms of the dragon, like, this thing really isn't that crazy in terms of bringing it against a potentially powerful flying faction. This is one of the most powerful flying characters in the game, and a lot of people don't realize that this is actually the case. But the Chaos Lord on a dragon, especially if you buff him upright, can take on just about anybody in a 1v1 situation. So obviously we saw the Filth Mace there. The poison helps. The terror doesn't really apply on the dragon, but the poison definitely can help. It also gives 25% weapon damage, which is okay. The Pendant of Slaanesh is one of the items that makes him so good. Plus 44 melee attack is huge for a character that already has really good melee attack stats. So with that active, he could definitely take Lewin. I mean, obviously Deadly Onslaught's pretty self-explanatory. Standard Die just gives himself more melee defense as well. Filth Mace, I don't know if I would always take on the dragon, but if you have the extra cost, the poison certainly can be helpful as well. And then for me, rather than taking Lore of Death, just because the Chaos Dragon does fire damage, I would actually take a Chaos Sorcerer Lore of Fire here. And you could do a few different things. You can, obviously you can Fireball Bretonian casters. It's a great use of your Winds of Magic. Unless they're on the Unicorn. If they're on the Unicorn, they get a little bit of extra magic resistance, but even still, you can do a lot of damage to someone like a Damsel. The Fey Enchantress does have a little bit of extra magic resistance, so I wouldn't be fireballing her. But you can also use the Fireball almost like a cannon and shoot it like sideways through cav units, or just shoot cav units in general. It will do pretty good damage there. But for buffing up the Chaos Lord himself, I would definitely recommend bringing Cascading Fire Cloak. It's a super cheap single target buff, 27 melee defense and 20% armor piercing damage, both of which will be very pertinent for the Chaos Lord while he's fighting a big, powerful flying character. Of course, likewise, it also procs Kindle Flame, so he gets 25% damage buff as well. Flaming Sword of Ruin, I don't know that I would necessarily take that here. You could maybe use it to buff up some of your ground melee units if they're fighting units with physical resistance. Any units with Blessing of the Lady, but generally I would say you're probably going to want Burning Head to just clear out peasants instead. Maybe you take Piercing Bolts of Burning if you really want to have some fun, and you can try and catch Bretonnian Cav and hold them in a tight little pocket. This does a ton of armor piercing damage, but at the very least I would say Fireball and Cascading Fire Cloak to buff up the Chaos Lord. And then obviously the throwing axes are pretty good to support. I'd probably take a few Marauders just to kind of pad out numbers a little bit. They'll trade reasonably well against most peasant units. The Soul of Damnation, I'd probably go for that. The upgraded Regiment of Renown Hell Cannon, just for the faster refire rate and accuracy. As for the rest of the infantry composition, we'll probably just take a few regular Chaos Warriors, maybe trade one of them for the Mirror Guard, just to get that extra immune to psychology. Obviously, of course, Chaos Warriors will trade well with all Bretonnian infantry, even Foot Squires, just because Chaos Warriors have such good melee attack and defense. They will trade quite cost effectively with Foot Squires. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this one. Well played, Reptile King. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.